the message is more important than the production. The message is so much more important than the production. What if I just acted as if the message was the most important thing? I'm officially the pastor of the Fourth Church of the Holy Goldfish. It's a joke that keeps on giving, but it really is about taking responsibility for your own spiritual journey. And I thought, I'll just admit to what it is. It's going to be a raggedy podcast, and I'm not going to probably do production and a whole lot of editing. And so there'll be background noise and technical difficulties. But at the core of what my work is about is how do we connect with our heart and with our passions and do the healing work so that we can live differently in a way that feels loving and life embracing. And that's important to me. And that's something I'm passionate about. Like many things that have started in my life, I decided to do a thing called the Holy Goldfish Commentary. It will be a Raggedy Podcast Production. I hope you'll come along the journey. Who knows where it'll take me?
Sometimes I'm up really early in the morning. Sometimes for no reason at all. That's just my normal. And this morning, when I woke up, a little later than my normal, way early in the morning, there was a song playing in my mind. Music is my motivator, my therapy, my solace. But this morning, it's my encouragement. Sometimes I'll just wake up and a song will be playing over and over in my mind, and I'll stop and think, what's the message to me this morning in that song? And this morning, the song that was playing, and it's usually not the whole song, it's just a part of it. There's a song in the gospel genre. I don't really know who sings it, but it says sometimes you have to encourage yourself. And I remember when that song struck a chord with me. It was early 2000s. I was doing an internship with a church in Warner Robins, Georgia. It was black church. It was black church of the mixed kind. It was non-denominational, which meant it was some holiness folks and some Baptist folk and some Methodist folk all jumbled up together. It was a real black church experience. And I remember sitting there one day, probably struggling because I didn't fit in very well. I didn't grow up in the black church experience and all of the theatrics and the costuming and the performance art and all of the getting up, getting down, sit up, stand up, sit down. All of that was just fascinating to me in sometimes an exhausting way. The kind of way where you go home from church and you're tired. You need a nap because you have put it in, or you've watched them put it in and that has made you tired. It was one of those kind of churches. And it was a very interesting time and an interesting experience. I was working with this church doing an internship. I was in graduate school. And working with this church taught me so much in so many different ways. And on one particular Sunday morning, I remember sitting there and the song came on and it was saying, sometimes you've got to encourage yourself. I was doing something that my family wasn't real supportive of. I was attending an evangelical school, and that was not the faith choice of my family. I was doing something that they didn't agree with. I should have been doing something else in life. And I remember listening to that song, and it's saying that sometimes there's nobody that's going to encourage you. Sometimes you've got to be the one to get up and encourage yourself. I don't know what the rest of the words were saying, but this morning that was playing over and over again, and I thought how relevant to my life today. Sometimes you've got to encourage yourself. And that's truth. It's wisdom. But what's the relevance to my life today and what's happening in my life today? And why was that the reminder that I woke up with? I'm doing some stuff, some projects, some things that I'm passionate about. I had the opportunity yesterday to go back to my notes from 2006, 2007. I'm working with a partner on convertible communities, building communities that are functional and life-embracing in times of peace, but that also are supportive and resilient in times of crisis. Places where individuals have the opportunity to live a bit more free, partly because of the physical structures, but partly because of the social tech. The work we do within ourselves to be able to live in community better. And we're going back to our strategy. We were doing strategic planning. How are we going to do this? How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to make it happen? Because we're passionate about making it happen. And we've got some projects that we've started, 2 of them to be specific. And they're not little projects, even though in my mind, that's what they feel like. I'm retired and we're just doing a couple of little projects, but in reality, they're not. They're big, big projects. And we began to talk about whether or not our trajectory is in the right direction. Because if you get off at the beginning, you're way off at the end. And we want to be dead center on this work that we're doing. Because we're tired and we got to have time to play. And so we can't be wasting time on the important stuff. Because we've learned that you do the important stuff in life first and then play with all the rest of the time that's left. We want to get to a whole lot of the playing because we got some ideas on how to play real good. But as we were talking, we both began to say, wait a minute, I remember. Wait a minute, hold on. I remember this working. Got experience. I know it worked. I know for myself it works if we do it this way. I'm talking about business structures and funding and financing and a whole bunch of things like that, that if you're really being honest, they make a difference. Can you afford to do this project just because you want to? And I began to think about that. And I've been thinking about it individually, and now we were thinking collectively. We're putting our thinking hats on and then having a come together to share those thoughts that we've been having about where we should go. Because sometimes it's simply inspiration. We got a lot of logic, and I like numbers, and numbers make it easy to understand very clearly. But some of the work that we're doing is about the feel. Does it feel good to you? And as we were having this exchange, I remembered, wait a minute, I've had these thoughts before. And oftentimes when that happens to me, I can go back to the notes where those thoughts were put to word. It was a whole thought. And it was an answer to a question that I hadn't even yet asked fully. And I went back and I was able to pull up some notes and some schematics. Some thinking about solutions for a later problem that was going to need to be answered in the question of how we fix community. And I pulled up the notes and realized a whole circle has happened almost 20 years ago. How do I know? Because on the bottom of these notes it says 2006 and 2007. But the solution that we need for today's problem of how do we make this happen was answered. It encouraged me. Girl, you on the right path. It confirmed for me what he was thinking. I think we should approach it this way. And I said, I'm absolutely sure that's the way we should approach it. Let me find these notes and make sure that we're on the same page. And we made some decisions, light decisions. We need to change our trajectory just slightly so that we're headed in that direction, because that direction is going to get us dead center to doing these things we want to do. But as I was thinking about this song this morning, sometimes you've got to encourage yourself. That wasn't all of the essence of it. Because after those conversations, I headed into town. It's Corpus Christi holiday. It's big party holiday. And it's really a religious holiday that merges with the secular. But I thought this morning that my life encourages me. I didn't need to get a YouTube video of encouragement or motivation this morning. Not that that's a bad thing. But I was able to reflect on what happened last night in light of what was happening in my life all day yesterday with these exchanges going back and forth with my partner, because it was an all-day conversation that we were having as we're processing and thinking and strategizing together. I went out and I realized that my community, my life encourages me towards community. You see, Corpus Christi is a Catholic holiday, and I'm not Catholic. And I suspect a whole lot of the people that I celebrated with last night weren't either. Partly because they weren't in Mass. They were out in the park partying and eating sweet treats with me. But this community has created a place where they allow them to be them and me to be me. We just do it together. And so what happens is the sweet treats start days ago, and the music starts about sunset. And those who are participating in this grand mass, this grand communion, this is the big communion and the confirmation that happens each year around this time. They allow those people to go and celebrate their faith in that way. And the others party and play and get together, young and old, everybody all together. Old men eating sweet treats, older women waving wands, sending bubbles flying into the air. Grown folks leaping for joy as they pop these bubbles that have been offered as a play offering. And as the evening progresses, they're waiting for those that are a part of the Catholic celebration to finish the important stuff. They're waiting for them to exit the Grand Cathedral, the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, one of the iconic places in my city. And they part the people that are in the streets, thick and heavy. And they parade around the square, singing, talking, with candles lit, in a sort of vigil as the culmination of this. And the band joins them as the band is waiting for them to come out, and they parade together around the square as others pay respect and honor their choices, their faith, their spiritual expressions. And then, not only the people, but their faith leaders as well come and join in the celebration. Because even the celebration is part of their tradition, but it's part of the tradition that everyone gets to participate in, and that's the fireworks. Not fireworks like I grew up with, but the kind of fireworks that spin hazardously all around the square. Colors and lights and whistles that spin in circles violently, that shoot into the air wildly. We participate in this celebration with them, and I thought this is community. And then I said, girl, you're not going to stay out here all night because you got to get home. You don't know when the buses stop running, and you got to get either a bus or a cab and get yourself home, and you're going to be tired. And all this standing and these sweet treats are going to give you a sugar drop. You've eaten all the sweet treats, and then you're going to crash. You shouldn't have eaten any of them, and yet you sampled several. Well, a few more than several. But as I'm leaving to go and do the logical thing, I'm struck by the balcony of singers and band playing. The balcony that's decorated in beautiful flowers, roses and flowers of different colors, and the people that are standing in the street and dancing, including an old man who has tucked his cane sideways under his arm, and he too is participating in the celebration. How does that involve encouraging myself? It's where life encourages me. Life and living in a place that feels so much more like community fuels me. Because at the core, this work, this convertible community work, is about how can we heal community. And what does that mean? What does healed community look like? And for me, it starts with a feel. What does it feel like to be together where you get to just be yourself? Not the raggedy, broken, hurt, pained version of yourself, but you, the real you that's down deep inside, if we take off the layers of fear and guilt and insecurity. Last night I got to just be me in the midst of all that was happening, and there was a lot. But I was in community that allowed it, and that felt good. And so this morning for me, sometimes you've got to encourage yourself. It's more about saying, you're on the right track, doing the right things. And the right things really are just living an honest expression of myself, my best self. It was as if that song was telling me, you got it, you got it, you got it. Because that's my encouragement to myself. You're on the right path. You're doing this thing. We're doing it. Convertible communities, it's my baby. It's been decades of work saying we gotta fix it. It's not we don't know how. It's not can we. It's we must. You know what life feels like for you. Does life feel loving, life embracing, vibrant, thriving, and resilient should crisis show up? We want to build places and people where that is the truth. And I thought, what a better place to be doing that work than in a place that feels so much like that on so many days to me. And so this morning, as I began to plan out my day, it's starting with a song. Sometimes you've got to encourage yourself. And today's a good day for me to do that. So in reflection, I'm encouraged. And that's a good way to start my day.